But one thing you have to grant, that irrespective of its unreliability, irrespective of its using the terrorism as an instrument of its foreign policy, especially against India and earlier against Afghanistan also, and the Pakistan has been a hotbed of terror from all countries in the world. They all know it.
Possibility of a two-front war, to my mind, as of now, is very low. Xi Jinping has actually sat in China, has not visited any country for the last 600 days. He is looking at somehow before the next third plenary, next elections for the chairmanship of the Chinese Communist Party to secure his power in China.
China has very smartly engineered its rise on the global stage. And it has been wanting to occupy the number one place, displacing USA.
Historically, China and India should never have crossed each other's path. Historically, because we both had a very, very pleasant relationship, maybe because of the geographies of the past. Movement abrogated Article 370 and decided that the entire POK, and the map was released that the entire POK is officially part of India, and India has the capability to actually take over Gilgit-Baltistan.
Today, the Americans have woken up to that, so they are trying to create new systems like new quartet that has been formed with the Abraham Accords, and after that, two Abraham Accord countries, UAE, Israel, and US, and invited India to be part of it. I am not a believer that the Quad will come to your help when you have a fight with China or a war with China or Pakistan. Everybody will do a shuttle diplomacy in the process.
As far as India-Pakistan is concerned, it is an open war. In this scenario, there are less risks for Pakistan, more risks for India. What may definitely happen, and which is happening even today, is the collusion in the grey zone.
Hello everyone, followers and patrons of Diplomacy Direct. Today on Diplomacy Direct, we are in presence of two very eminent individuals, one a military commander and another a diplomat, to discuss the Sino-Pak collusivity and the strategic and territorial interests. China has a relation with Pakistan that is taller than Mount Everest, deeper than Mariana Trench, and sweeter than honey. And it needs to be kept in mind that since 2010, Pakistan is the only country with which China has an all-weather strategic partnership. And we see that CPEC only cements this alliance, right? So CPEC started with $45 billion in budget, and even though there are revenue losses due to Pakistan's unsound governance and the deep state interference, now it is incurring more than $65 billion losses, and the extrapolations are still under analysis. Now they have moved from Gwadar to Karachi, as Karachi becomes the hub of the trade and finance for Pakistan. And despite all these hiccups, they show the world that nothing will deter this friendship, and with weapons sale and military technology transfer, we need to discuss the longevity of this friendship and the side effects, mainly the side effects that India will face being in the middle of this nexus, right at its intermediate borders. Hello, everyone. I am Vipul Tamhane, and welcome to yet another session from Diplomacy Direct. Today, it's my pleasure to have two stalwarts to bring perspective to the impact of Sino-Pak collusivity on India's external and internal security. One from the state diplomacy and other from the military diplomacy perspective. So in alphabetical order, we have Ambassador Anil Trigunayat and Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh. General Dushyant Singh, PVSM, AVSM, was commissioned in the 9th Maratha Light Infantry. He was the chief of staff in the eastern sector and has commanded a corps in Punjab and retired as the commandant of Army War College. He has distinct service, served twice with the NSG as the DIG and the IG of operations. He has served in varied terrains and theater of commands. And for today's conversation, actually, he brings a very unique perspective from his command over subjects like counterterrorism, tackling insurgencies, military strategy, and mainly the two front war scenarios from his first-hand operational experience. So welcome to Diplomacy Direct, General Singh. Next is our career diplomat, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He was India's ambassador to Russia, Libya, Jordan, and High Commissioner to Malta. And he has served in Indian missions in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, US, Russia, Sweden, and Nigeria. Ambassador Trigunayat is a member of Governing Council of Raisina House and US NAS Foundation, Indian Forum for Public Diplomacy, and he's a secretary of Association of Indian Diplomats, basically the former ambassadors group. He also serves on board and advisory committees of several domestic and international think tanks, institutions of diplomacy and Chamber of Commerces. He is a visiting fellow and has conducted several researches at Oxford University. His main forte includes foreign and economic policies, two very major facets of the DIEM, which we'll talk later on, with West Asia, Africa, and Russia, and managing India's interests in conflict zones, especially in the current South Asia, which makes, again, his perspective to today's discussion so valuable. So welcome to Diplomacy Direct, Ambassador Trigunayat.
Thank you, Vipul. Good evening.
So, gentlemen, thanks for being here. Setting the stage for the conversation, Pakistan as a fundamental national character of the savior and the beacon of Islam, with the literal meaning of the name being land of the pure. It's emerged all false as usual. So tolerating the genocide of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province and itself committing atrocities on Balochs. The state is also tolerating the consumption of pork and alcohol and other proclivities going against the tenets of Islam by the Chinese workers, as reported in distress by the Pakistani people, which are going unanswered by the state mechanism and everything, right? Pakistan has armed the terrorists in Kashmir with the same funds, equipped, and weaponry provided by the US, playing a double game, right? ISI puppeting the terrorist factions and now Panjshir for Kashmir rhetoric. The world knows that Pakistan can be no farther away from Islam and is on the political side, it's just squeezing China only for its funds, with historical testament dealing with Americans, right? Now, looking at China, China has its aggressive hegemony, ideology-driven debt trapping and military strong-arming policies, crumbling economy at home, extorting and penalizing businessmen and celebrities for CCP's gains, the anti-religious narrative for the national good, in brackets communism, and Xi Jinping's neo-Chinism. So both parties prove to be on a destructive path and aren't true to their words. So Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, how is this history of unfaithfulness going to be seen when both countries look in each other's eyes? And what is so important that both are ready to turn a blind eye to the possibilities of probable deceitful behavior going ahead, and still they want to go ahead with this alliance, knowing at the back of their minds that this may blow up in their faces at some point in time? And how can India capitalize on these vulnerabilities and play into such plausible scenarios? Sir.
Well, thank you, Vipul. You have already laid out the scenario and also touched upon several important dimensions of the relationship. And so I'll not repeat those. The fact remains that China has very smartly engineered its rise on the global stage. And it has been wanting to occupy the number one place, displacing USA in the bargain. Mm-hmm. Economically, it is already a very big power. It is trying to emerge as a huge technological power and try to challenge, because that's what will decide whether the country stays on that course or not. Mm-hmm. In that quest, India is also a country that is aiming to aspire high as a democracy, different political system altogether. Mm-hmm. And it looks at India is exercising its influence across the world, especially the Western world is supporting India. And not for now, for decades now. And therefore, what happens is that it is trying to find ways whereby it can contain India within South Asia. Mm-hmm. That is the fundamental tenet of its policy. How does it do that? The most convenient tool for it is Pakistan. So, but one thing you have to grant, that irrespective of its unreliability, irrespective of its using the terrorism as an instrument of its foreign policy, especially against India and earlier against Afghanistan also. Mm-hmm. And the Pakistan has been a hotbed of terror from all countries in the world. They all know it. It's not that no country knows. Everybody knows it. Despite that, Pakistan's ability to use its nuisance value to achieve the kind of heft it gets from all major powers, from the USA for the last 20 years at least, or before that, it was part of their non-NATO ally also status and was part of their mechanisms in the Cold War. Mm-hmm. With Russia, nowadays, it's very close. With China, as you mentioned, is an ironclad friendship. Now, China's friendship, you can understand, is basically the Pakistan is one angle, nuclear power, clandestinely obtained. Mm-hmm. But it is one country that can create a nuisance for India all the time, right? It has done so in the past, but it is now doing it as an instrument of China's policy towards India. We have fought wars, we have with China. So we have bad relationships, let's say, worse with Pakistan and bad with China. So in that scenario, they both are together in this. And now I see a new kind of a dynamic that is emerging across. With China, I see Russia, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Afghanistan, Qatar. It's going all the way because we have to look at it in the Asian context, not only in this. Because China is your, if I won't say enemy number one, at least a competitor number one in every which way, in every domain of strategic influence that we are seeking. West Asia is most important for us, and we know that China is extremely important there now. They have all endorsed the BRI project, and CPEC is part of the BRI project. Now, CPEC serves two purposes for its connectivity to its Xinjiang province, as well as to further down to Central Asia and to other places. And it also provides us an access, whether it's Gwadar, Karachi, or whatever it is in the Indian Ocean, and to the West Asia. It assures and ensures its supplies of oil and gas as long as in the midterm from this. So Pakistan serves that very interest for it. So I would presume that Pakistan is acting currently, at least. We don't know how long will that continue, but at the moment and before, because other countries are not so reliable to it, whether it's US or others, but it's trying to cut bargains with all the countries because it tries to play the mediating card between the US and China as well. So it has done that. And on that, the Chinese are continuing to bet on it, while they are also engaging other countries in South Asia, which is being treated as some kind of a political challenge for India in keeping these relationships at an even keel with the neighboring countries. So the scenario is a bit difficult. But at the same time, India's policy with China, despite the war, despite the conflict, has been driven, in my view, by the competition and cooperation module. We compete with one another, we cooperate with one another, but only in the recently, after Galwan and all those incidents, we have seen that has gone into conflict. We have also talked about whether China and Pakistan, we could have to fight both together, whether we can overcome the asymmetries in this warfare or not. That is time will tell, and General Saab knows better about it. But at the same time, our biggest problem with China is, in my view, economic and technological. You see, economically, China is 5 times your economy. So therefore, its pockets are 5 times more deeper. It is a totalitarian state, so its decision-making powers are 5 times more stronger than yours, faster than you, delivery mechanism. So anywhere you see, wherever India is present, we see the Chinese are present in a bigger way, with their bigger pockets. So those are the challenges that we have to contend. Technologically, they're far superior. Whether it is by stealth they have acquired it or by indigenously they have acquired it. But they are the ones which are spending hugely in that. So we have to see what they have achieved, how they have achieved, right? The question is, how can we reach there? Now, situation today is such that we alone cannot do that. It's not possible. We do not like alliances as a word, right? We don't want to be giving away our strategic autonomy. So you have to find alignments of sorts. I am not a believer that the Quad will come to your help when you have a fight with China or a war with China or Pakistan. Everybody will do a shuttle diplomacy in the process. But at the same time, what do you get out of it? You get an access to technology, you get an access to warfare, you get access to intelligence. So those are the things that are going to be extremely important. From India's perspective, it'll be a maritime warfare and the land warfare, both, and space as well. So therefore, we have to prepare from that. How can we, whether we'll be able to exploit the fissures? I don't see that there are very many fissures. Of course, there is something now in the context of Afghanistan. You see, the Chinese, like the Americans, also can't take the body bags. They're exactly very similar in their approaches. They all like bigger the beautiful, but at the same time, that is one of their weaknesses. So what they did was, now they also don't like terrorism, but they have been supporting Pakistani terrorism against India. Whether it was case of Masood Azhar, whether it is holding him there, or talking to the terror groups in Pakistan. Now you mentioned, why would they not? Now, if you are completely sold out to a country, if your economic engagement is so strong, how are you going to talk about Uyghurs or anybody else? Taliban, which is supposed to be very pure kind of Islam they are trying to promote, they have also got to deal with the Chinese. They are willing to contain the ETIM and Xinjiang and will not allow them to go there, Turkestan. So how many Middle Eastern countries have criticized China? Rarely 1 or 2. So this is today because it's a giant economic power. So it's a lesson for us, I would say. We are not going to go to war with them on a full plate because China doesn't want a war also, in my view.
Absolutely.
It wants to keep you engaged, bleed you white by keeping your men over the border, try to create nuisance here and there, and try to weaken you from within. It fights psyops with you. So we have to learn to do the same kind of a thing with China. Pakistan will have to be handled the way we are doing it because our bigger problem with Pakistan is only terrorism. So we'll have to opt for strikes wherever it exists, show to it that we will go and hit you wherever it matters to us. So that's the way I think. So exploiting at this stage is difficult because it all depends on the international dynamic.
So well said, sir. So basically, looking from, like you rightly said, it's a shuttle diplomacy that needs to, that's being in perspective, and it has to be, brought out in more perspective. Also, the trade deficits are widening. So that is something that needs to be balanced. So looking at things from the India's positioning perspective now. So first, from China's perspective, India stepped out of RCEP, followed by a few other countries, making the trade alliance weaker in the area. India voiced China, against China regarding the South China Sea and for the Malaka diplomacy. India joined the anti-China alliance first with the Quad and then with the mini Quad with Israel and, like you said, very few Middle Eastern countries, but UAE is one of them. And then India also supported the AUKUS formation. So, General Sir, the question is to you. Is that what angers China most about India and motivates it to be suddenly aggressive against India after 1962, more than half a century later? In short, what's cooking in Chinese kitchen?
Thanks, Vipul, for inviting me to your portal for this very relevant discussion. And I was quite impressed by the landscape which has been set up by Ambassador Trigunayat for as far as the China-Pak-India triangle is concerned. The
Absolutely.
geopolitics has been very well laid out by him, so I'm not going to repeat all those issues. Coming on straight to your question, which is what angers China. Let me accept this that, historically, China and India should never have crossed each other's path. Historically, because we both had a very, very pleasant relationship, maybe because of the geographies of the past, right? But once the Tibet and Xinjiang provinces were taken over by the Chinese, and primarily after the taking over of China by the PRC, is that the entire dynamics between China and India have changed. So it's all about primacy of CCP, Chinese Communist Party. I think it is their ambition to control China politically forever in perpetuity that India is viewed from that perspective. And India, in that context, is a regional competitor as far as China is concerned. And therefore, at the global level, it is seeing the US as a competitor. And at the regional level, anybody who can spoil its party towards the Chinese Communist Party being in power, retaining power for perpetuity, it would be India. And hence, India has to be contained. And as rightly brought out by the ambassador, India has to be balanced. And if India has to be balanced, then they have to look at issues which can actually create problems for India. And in that lineup, we have a whole lot of issues which all of you are aware. Boundary dispute is there, etc. But what has really, I think, upped them the maximum has been the abrogation of Article 370. That is something which has actually hit them at the core of their sovereignty. See, the Malacca dilemma was being answered partially. I won't say this was the only option of a Malacca dilemma, but the route through Xinjiang, then on to CPEC, and also through Wakhan corridor is under threat. Movement abrogated Article 370 and decided that the entire POK, and the map was released that the entire POK is officially part of India, and India has the capability to actually take over Gilgit-Baltistan. What would have happened? Should India take over Gilgit-Baltistan, the entire dream of China extending its influence and power towards the Central Asian republics, also getting an access to the high seas in the Arabian Sea through the CPEC, would have all come to naught. And hence it did the collusion in East Ladakh by way of Galwan, which actually tied us down to that area, virtually putting a kind of a temporary halt to our ambitions, or I won't say our ambitions, our rightful position of taking the entire JNK with us to a halt. So I would say the attack on its sovereignty by the declaration of Article 370 is what the China views, and that has been the trigger for the recent soaring of relations. Otherwise, if you take your mind back, the Chinese were actually trying to mend bridges with India, in terms of Modi and Xi summits, two of them. And it is after this and the advent of COVID that Xi Jinping has actually sat in China, has not visited any country for the last 600 days. He is looking at somehow before the next third plenary, next elections for the chairmanship of the Chinese Communist Party, to secure his power in China. And into my mind, this is the major reason why it is now annoyed with us. And then, followed the various actions which India took, anti-China action which India took, banning of apps. You all are aware of all those things, curbing of imports, curbing of investments,
The Huawei thing. Yeah.
curtailing of contracts. I don't have to repeat all those issues.
Yep.
That has only added fuel to fire. So as of today, the situation is that India has emerged, and especially we also must not forget, it's the most highly nuclearized zone in the world. With all the three adversaries actually being a nuclear power. So in this kind of a landscape, I think China has no option but to contain India, and the best method for it is via Pakistan. And hence the collusivity of China-Pak, which we keep talking about. Yes, will this collusivity take the form of a full-fledged war? That's a question which we need to analyze further, and I think I will cover that subsequently as we go along in this discussion. So, in my view, China will be actually an adversary. I won't even put him in the competitor zone. We had the cooperation, competition dynamics going on in the past, but now it is firmly a well-recognized adversary of India, at least in the short term. Yep. I think that should answer your question about why the Chinese are so angered against India.
Yeah, so basically the Chinese Shaochuan, that means the state propaganda machinery, has various soundboards like the Global Times, and actually that says that the aggression was first started by India by building military settlements near or into the Chinese border areas and so on and so forth. But following the anti-China movement from the Western nations, and India is riding this sentiment, right? This is what their internal saying is. And some say this is the anti-communism strategy as the world sees the communist trio making an alliance again, and we'll come to that, right? Ambassador Trigunayat, sir, you served in Moscow as a deputy chief of mission in the rank of ambassador and are close to the Indo-Russian foreign policies. So to look at the flip side of the current situation, is it also the fact that India was Russia's friend, hence under the notional clause of untouchability for China, and now that we've stepped away from Russia alliance to join hands with the arch rival US for the Quad, gives an open license to uncurb its boxed aggression against India since all these years. So what do you want to say about that?
Well, Vipul, it'll be quite simplistic to say that Russia has gone into China's pocket. In fact, the Russian-Chinese relationship has its own, ups and downs. As I had, they were virtually at war at one time, and they were even as two communist powers. And so we have seen the difficulties in their relationship. But current state of bonhomie between the two countries is actually driven by the US policy of trying to contain Russia, basically. And Russia is today led by a very strong leader in Putin, who understands these war games much better than anyone else. No other leader in the world would understand the way he did, or he does, and he plays his cards rather well. Today, you can also in certain way look at the similar relationship with the relationship between France and Germany. You can compare it in certain ways. But here, as far as India is concerned, that relationships are cannot be confined to some kind of a strict modules that they will always remain within those parameters. All relationships evolve. They evolve according to your national interest and according to the geopolitics, what is happening at a given time. I mean, USA was all through against us, right, during the Cold War. But after 1990s, when the Soviet Union disintegrated, then thereafter, we started going towards America, so did Russia. But Russians were disenchanted by the Americans rather fast. And therefore, when they were continuing to be under pressure, and it is a big power, it is the only other superpower that gives some sleepless nights to the Americans. Again in technology, again in defense, and largest country in the world. That is another thing. With the most endowed country in the world. They don't have population. That is their biggest drawback. As far as India is concerned, so our relationship was very good until the Soviet times, and it got downgraded to a great deal. And then thereafter, Putin comes on the stage in 2000. And he personally invested a great deal in this relationship. And that's when we had our strategic or privileged partnership with Russia. Now, we cannot do without Russia. That even American, day before yesterday, one of their generals clearly said that India has to continue to depend on Russia. 70% of your arms and equipment that of Russian origin. Russia has stood with you when nobody else stood with you.
Absolutely.
Whether in the National Security Council, if the J&K issue still continues to be with you, I mean, you still have a moral authority and the legal authority over it, a great credit goes to Soviet Union and Russia to standing by with us. As far as China's today, I mean, I know for a fact that Chinese and Russians are extremely close, but they don't want a fight between India and China. They want India and China to coexist, and that is one reason that RIC was started, Russia, India, China trilateral in 2000, right? They started, which was the Americans and every Western countries thought there's a new kind of an alliance going against us, right? But it has not taken off to the way because of the mutual trust between India and China. But Moscow till today tries to keep, I mean, even the last time when the meetings all took place between whether it's Raksha Mantri and the defense minister of China, or within the context of SU or external affairs minister and Wang Yi, I mean, all these meetings have happened in China, in Russia, that. So Russia has been playing that. But at the same time, one thing that many people do not know, they have not openly condemned the hostilities by China, right? But what they have done is, what you needed most during a war. In 1999, I was in Moscow at the time when we had Kargil. The Russians were supplying us whatever we needed the most in real-time manner that you cannot expect from any other country in the world, howsoever strong a partner is there. During this time also, when Rajnath Singh went there, he had a list which he provided to the Russians, and Russians said, we will give it to you. For your defense, Russia stands with you. These are the words. Putin and Modi have extremely great relationship. Now, of course, there is a competition. They do not agree with our perspective on Indo-Pacific. But we always keep saying that Quad is not against China. As far as India said, Americans have said the same thing. Japanese are saying the same thing. Even Australians have said that Quad is not against it. Even Australians have gone to the extent of saying the Prime Minister that AUKUS is also not against China. But formation of AUKUS has taken this problem that we were always facing of credibility vis-a-vis the rest of the world and China and Russia in particular, that it is anti-China. It is anti-China, there is no doubt about it. But at the same time, when leaders' statements come, we all know that it is not. So that is where I think that Russia still remains. We cannot do anything about it. They are very much invested in us. They want to invest with India. India has been invited to be a special partner in Far East of Russia, where Chinese have a greater ascendance. The large number of Chinese are getting in there. All the oil and gas, Arctic. We are trying to create a new Indo-Pacific construct with them through Chennai to Vladivostok corridor. So, I mean, with Russia, our relationship has been very, very intricate, and no other relationship at the moment can score it out. And that is one reason that India has not cancelled the S-400D. Irrespective of the fact that the Americans are very miffed at us. They don't want it to go through, but the Americans have to come round. Their coming round means is that if you are buying $5 worth of things from Russia, you buy $6 worth of things from us. So it is a transactional partnership, even though they also call it a global comprehensive strategic partnership. So we have to choose our friends carefully, but we have to keep looking out for our enemies at all the time.
Correct, because again, the 1971 thing that you said, when Nixon went all hot and Russia came to aid, and from there to the current. So, is this current relationship with US coming at a heavy price for India, losing out on our best friend Russia, or what is the bigger price that we are paying is something that we need to decide, even under the Quad and even under the Chinese aggression?
No, I think we need to look at it just once. second, I would like to say, you see, our problem with India is that we try to look at every relationship in an emotional manner. There should be no emotional attachments into this, soft power apart. But this is a pure transactional relationship. And as long as you speak from the position of power, whether it is Russia, whether it is China, whether it is US, you will gain that respect on the table. If you are on the receiving end and being placating them, then you are not going to become a superpower or a hyperpower or whatever it is. You don't have that thing in you. So it is important for us that we choose our friends according to our own national interest. The other countries should not have the position to dictate to us what we do, why we do. If it is a fall, it is our fall. If it is a gain, it is our victory.
Yep. So concerning India, so India, China, Pakistan, both, carry shared history, traditional baggage of differences, differing perceptions, and then general competition, collaboration fuels the basic complexities in the interconnected theater. So here, if either of the two launches an offensive against India, will it be certain that the other will join one, or evenly most plausible is that both launch an overt synchronized war, either in the geographical proximal battlefield like Gilgit-Baltistan, like how Ambassador Trigunayat just said, or on two different fronts to create a joint effect. So, General Singh, with all this combined might and subsequent confidence, what are the possibilities of China-Pak alliance opening a two-front aggression?
Vipul, as far as this question goes, it's the most common question which people ask whenever we talk of China, India, and Pakistan. But before I answer this question, I think I would like to answer two more sub questions to it. The first one is that the possibility of such a two-front war, right? The possibility of a two-front war, to my mind, as of now, is very low. And there are two reasons for it. The first one is the ambition of China. Ambition of China is very clear as of now today, is to emerge as a global power, supplanting the US by 2049, definitely. 2035 is the timeline which they have given, being a dominant power. Now, if China is seen indulging in a war with India, where India is not 1962 India.
Yep.
There is no more a pushover force. India has actually shown to the Chinese in Galwan what it can do. It took a very small, I would say, a brigade commander level action of occupying Kailash ranges, and it got the jitters into the Chinese. A lot of people say that the Chinese are, they have placed so many missiles, rockets, etc. They have pumped in additional troops along our borders, especially in the Xinjiang and Tibet sector. But what makes a country go to war is its artillery. The artillery of China still remains undeployed. So what you are seeing is optics, okay, to somehow contain India. And India knows about it. Our military commanders are not stupid. They know about it. And we have taken actions. And I would not like to repeat those actions in terms of security, etc. issues. But we have taken adequate actions in terms of repositioning ourselves and redeploying ourselves, reorbiting our formations in a manner that we are now very well poised. So any war with India, two front or one front, we know how to deal with two front and one front war, is likely to produce a situation where the Chinese will not emerge as winners. And there goes kaput their dream of becoming the world's global power.
Hegemony, yeah.
Why should they take the risk of getting a stalemate or getting checkmated by a much lower or much, comparatively, I'm not saying that we are weaker, but comparatively, as the ambassador himself brought out, we are 5 times weaker in terms of economy, 5 times weaker in terms of military power, etc. So therefore, there is a differential of power between India and China. So why should we be seen as failing against a country? A stalemate for China is a failure. Let me tell you this way. Okay, so therefore they would not like to risk their ambition of the primary ambition of emerging as the supplant. So the possibilities are very low. Now, coming on to your hypothetical question that yes, the Chinese may opt for a two-front war. Now, imagine what are the options for China. Option one, China initiates and Pakistan colludes with China in terms of only creating a situation along our western border. So it's not an active cooperation, active launching of war, but it creates a situation along our western border. Our troops are tied up there. B, both China and Pakistan coordinate with each other, synchronize, and launch a contiguous, say, operations in the eastern Ladakh and Gilgit-Baltistan area, or any area like this, or Pakistan is undertaken operations on the western border, tying up our troops. Now, in this situation too, it is the ambition, it is that dominance of a superpower or likely superpower proclaiming itself to be equal to US, taking help of a Pakistan, which is itself, in fact, it is finding itself survival of Pakistan today is at stake. The way its economy is, the way its internal politics is, Pakistan is actually barely managing to survive. It's taking help of such a country. So therefore, it will not be seen as a power seeking support. So I rule out this synchronized bit. What may definitely happen, and which is happening even today, is the collusion in the gray zone. Now, that is something which we need to be very careful of. And today, if I were to list out the collusion which the China and Pakistan are actually doing against us, I think many of us would not be even aware of it. Let me just highlight these, and I'll then close this particular issue with you. First of all, 8 submarines to Pakistan by China. Add 18 of Pakistan and 68 of China. It's a huge stealth force prowling around in our maritime area. We need to be careful of this. B, Karakoram Highway, Wakhan Corridor connectivity. This is something that is the reason why China is so actively supporting Pakistan. It doesn't want its only flagship program of the BRI faltering. So that's why it has shifted now from Gwadar to Karachi, as you had highlighted. It somehow wants to prove that yes, BRI can take shape, because BRI is the dream of Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is doing his best to somehow. So this is the second area. Do you know that the Chinese have built Baidu Earth stations in Pakistan all over? And that actually would de-link Pakistan from GPS systems, making them independent of India in terms of the forces aligned to us trying to sabotage their communications or the navigational operations of Pakistan. Then, posting of Pakistani officers along the Xinjiang Tibet border in the Western Theater Command of China. Then you have the collusivity in the Depsang, which I highlighted earlier also, that why they went in for Depsang was the Galwan area was basically they didn't want us to do anything in the Gilgit-Baltistan area, thus threatening their sovereignty. I mean, China today considers, it knows that we will not take on Aksai Chin, but definitely Gilgit-Baltistan, we have a legal right to take. Okay. The Aksai Chin could be a issue of lines. There are so many lines which have gone across the India-China border that there is a certain amount of confusion there. Then you take the internal security troubles of Pakistan and the Chinese in the Northeast. See, we say that the Northeast is devoid of ISI. No. The Kaladan project has been stymied essentially because of interference of ISI. If problems are happening in Bangladesh and because of which the container corridor is now today stuck, it is because of the Pak ISI's interference in that area. So there are a number of areas where similarly Nepal border. Today, as per my information, the entire Nepal border, there are large number of sleeper cells. There are guest houses which have been constructed by the Pak ISI for halting of their so-called nefarious elements trying to cross over. And you know what, for what? Gorakhpur, Faizabad, Varanasi. These are symbols of our, at least in the current disposition, they are considered as the symbols of Indian religious faith. So if they are able to strike these areas, that is the kind of war which they are going to do. And I'm not even talking of the cyber and the space domain where these both are collaborating with each other. We will see new age warfare taking place in the future, and we should be prepared for the collusivity in that area more. But we can only be prepared if our comprehensive national power is strong, a guarantor. Like the ambassador said, we have to be negotiating with people in a transactional manner from a position of power. So for you to attain that position of power, your military power has to continuously grow. So you cannot say that just because the possibilities of a two-front war are not there, I will not develop my military power. That is incorrect. Unfortunately, a number of people are taking this logic to the extreme, that saying that no, military power investment in the military domain is not required. I'm afraid we will again come to knots. It will be a situation like 1962 if we ignore our military power. So therefore, grow your military power smartly into the areas of artificial intelligence, disruptive technologies, drone. These are the places where we need to actually put in our. As far as warfare is concerned, Indian Army is by far the most blooded army of the world. We have fought all wars we have won except for 1962. We are continuously fighting a war in J&K, Northeast. The quantum of casualties with which our Indian Defence Forces have suffered in the last 40, 50 years is no, I mean, you will have to actually look at the data to see as to every day we are sacrificing one officer of ours or the other. So as far as mountain warfare capabilities are concerned, our men are past masters in mountain warfare today. The Chinese have had to actually start recruiting people from the Tibetan belt to raise a mountain army, mountain brigade to fight us. What are these? These are the actual real indicators which we must put. I mean, we must look at and say whether the Chinese really have the will now to go to war with us. Yes, they may take this salami slicing actions, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. They will play in that gray zone of so-called the battle of lines, I call it nowadays. Since there are so many lines which we have confused ourselves. Actually, not we, the British have given us this in legacy, that there are so many lines that people can take advantage of these lines. So that's my take as far as your two-front war is concerned. Prepared, yes. Possibilities, probably low. That's my final take.
Fantastic. Sir, so extrapolating into the possibilities, the hypothecation of the situation, Trigunayat sir, the next question is to you. So again, how will it pan out if not a full-fledged a World War III, but a kind of a quasi war or a Cold War kind of a situation, because everything is into a race right now? How will it pan out in terms of the communist trio and the Islamic Caliphate alliance against the Quad, the mini Quad, and the Democratic Alliance, D10? How is that scenario to be looked like?
Well, as I fully agree what General Singh said. In fact, he has very clearly panned out. But I also believe that personally, I mean, I have been maintaining it all through that, like he said, China also doesn't want a war because it cannot afford it, not financially or economically, but for the simple reason that it serves its no purpose strategically. Because land we are no longer 1962, as has been seen in Galwan, everywhere one has shown it. And so Indian Army is far more better trained. We may be less equipped, but we are better trained, better fighters, one of the best armies we have. So that is one thing. But what they can do is they basically believe and do try to do is system destruction warfare. That is going to create, because today there is a greater dependence on communications. Most of your equipment is driven by technology, So that is the thing that we have to be extremely cautious and start working. We have started working rather late, but I think it's going on. So this sophisticated electronic warfare and all that is going to be a major problem. As far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan also doesn't want a war with India because it's a losing proposition for it, right? It may talk about this 1 pound bombs or whatever it is, but it's serving no purpose. But it has an asymmetric advantage because it is using terrorists as an instrument of its foreign policy. It can cause a more major destabilization inside the country. What has happened in Afghanistan, the fear of Afghanistan is not that Afghan people will come and fight with you, but it is the people who are driven by these radicalized philosophies. That is a bigger war that we need to fight in our region. And for that, I think an international collaboration is a must. So that is something. As far as Quad and, calibrating caliphate and all, I just tried to pan out a word I used was cryptarch. I don't know if you gathered it at that last time. What I am fearing is that seeing the way the dynamic is emerging, USA is withdrawing from the region mostly, whether it is from Afghanistan or West Asia, trying to focus a bit more the Indo-Pacific. So what we are looking at, the China has been extensively engaged from Iran to Israel in West Asia completely. It's very well embedded. It is, and its linchpin is UAE, which is its closest partner today. And it is also a closest partner, a strategic partner of India. None of those countries want to choose between India and China, or for that matter between India and Pakistan, except Israel. So Israel is also very close to China. They are also having technological collaboration with them. So I personally feel that in West Asia, and China has already, invested a huge amount of money and taken over the ports and tried to create the synergies during the past 2 decades, quietly under the American umbrella, security umbrella. Today, the Americans have woken up to that. So they are trying to create new systems like new quartet that has been formed with the Abraham Accords. And after that, 2 Abraham Accord countries, UAE, Israel, and US, and invited India to be part of it. But India is also working with Iran, it's working with Saudi Arabia, it is working with Israel, with other countries, everywhere. But Islam is one factor that you cannot discount. And I have always believed that India has failed to play its Islamic card. We are the second largest Muslim country in the world. And that is what most of the countries in the Middle East don't even know about it. They don't take it into account. That is what has been used by Pakistan as Islamic leadership that you in the beginning made about, that it is for the cause of Islam. The Pakistan Islamic theory, religious state and all was debunked when Bangladesh was created. It holds no ground at all. Everybody knows it. That is a country where minorities have no right. That is, everybody knows it. In India, the minorities have become prime ministers and vice presidents and whatnot, and all kinds of positions they have held. Top actors are Muslims in India. So that is absolutely, so that is something that we need to project. And that's how you can contain Pakistan's influence with the Middle Eastern countries.
Also, to add this is India has a very unique vantage situation where we are the largest democracy hosting, like you rightly said, second largest population of Muslims, right? And that brings us to a crux or a place where we should leverage both of these things and actually play a balancing act here so now what I'll do is
one small thing I want to say before I close.
Mm-hmm.
A small thing is that so far we have just taken the bilateral path with individual countries trying to up the relationships, do whatever with every country, especially I would say in the West Asia Countries like Turkey and all are against India. They are not for India.
Yep.
They are part of the Pakistan campus, D10 you mentioned, and others. Not D10, the D8. That is the old Turkey, Pakistan, and this. But what I'm saying is that India has to think in a regional perspective rather than simply in a bilateral perspective. Because when you think in regional perspective, you have to take a lead. I have handled that area for many years, and I know that the most of the Gulf countries, most of the Middle Eastern countries wanted to work with India. Initially, we thought they are all with Pakistan, so we'll not work with them. So we had transactional relationship, just buyer seller. Then China has come, so now they are the Chinese. That will not work. We have to take on the onus. I mean, if there are costs, so be it. If you don't have the bandwidth to take on the costs, then you are not in the game. As simple as that.
Yes. So, like you rightly said, India has a rather a responsibility of playing an equalizer role in the region. So now I'm slowly taking it to a bit analytical and technical. Again, all the hypotheses, the alliances, and all the quads, and everything in place. I'm taking the conversation towards a game theory of our current situation by quoting India's Chief of Defense Staff, General Bipin Rawat. I quote, myriad complexities underlie the India-China-Pakistan triangle with narratives varying from competition to collaboration. Recent developments in Galwan, renewed ceasefire agreement with Pakistan, and the resurgent Quad, all amidst COVID diplomacy, this necessitates a relook at traditional approach and narratives on Sino-Pakistan collusion. Is it only a common anti-India sentiment that is driving it, or is the pentagram of the US, Russia, China, India, and Pakistan with their Dedic interplay manifesting itself? From a game theory perspective, the probability of such a collusion is explored to argue that leveraging of DIEM instruments, that is the diplomacy, information, military, and economic instruments of national power, combined with astute statecraft and foresight, is the way forward for India. We worked out our methods to say how collusive action could happen and not happen, how much and how far one nation can go against another, how they would support. We have worked out our contingencies, but yes, some kind of collusive action should be anticipated, unquote. So talking about a game theory of China-Pakistan collusion against India, the parameters that we consider are as follows, right? So either parties are willing to negotiate terms and get into the non-aggression agreement. With plethora of possibilities, we pick the scenarios from the extreme ends of the spectrum. So the best statistical scenario with anticipated DIEM payoffs being if India opts for negotiate or peace and China adopts non-collude, Pakistan has an option between negotiate and non-negotiate, right? Because again, Pakistani decisions are not unilateral. The deep state and the political mechanism goes in parallel. So Pakistan opts for negotiate or non-negotiate. Wherein on the other side of the spectrum, China prefers to collude, as Pakistan will prefer not negotiate, and so India will choose not negotiate no matter what China does. In this scenario, India opts to reverse collude with first initiation options with pentagrammic alliances like we saw, the AUKUS, the quads and the mini quads and everything, exposure to the other allied parties, and how will the either of situations look like? So, gentlemen, please discuss.
Yeah.
General Singh can start.
Yeah, I see game theory is a very, very tricky tool to analyze political situation. Politics is something so unpredictable. It's like the human mind, which is controlling politics. Yes, but we will go ahead with it. And you painted two extreme positions. The first one is no negotiations, basically by everybody, which is a confrontation by all three. And the second one is negotiation. That's the win-win situation where everybody decides to keep its differences aside, looks for a common meeting ground and
The
negotiate.
best diplomatic scenario.
The best diplomatic scenario, whatever way you want to call it. I have taken four, in fact, possible cut sections between these two. And then I will expect a response from each one of you. I have given my response, but the first one is that China and Pakistan I'm clubbing together, right? Taking them as one player and India as the second player. Because between China and Pakistan, there are only two options. Either he is going to collude or he is not going to collude. Basically, in more often than not, a Pakistan negotiated Pakistan initiated conflict, China has the option of not colluding. It may not collude, or it may collude, or it may collude partially by giving it that moral support, that it will probably move some forces across our borders and then try to keep us tied down, etc. It will be a minimal kind of a thing. So it has both the options. So the first situation, which is that India and China, okay, go into a conflict, and Pakistan colludes. What is the risk for China? This situation I had already painted in my discussion. It's got a moderate risk for China in the sense that if the result is a checkmate, then it loses its long-term aim of becoming a dominant global power by 2035 and supplanting the US by 2049. The next scenario is China and India play around in the gray zone. Pakistan has a conflict with India. Very highly possible. Very highly possible. No risks for China because it is in the gray zone. It has the deniability on its side. As far as India-Pakistan is concerned, it is an open war. In this scenario, there are less risks for Pakistan, more risks for India. Why I say so is that if the Chinese collude in terms of, like I said, Baidu stations, pushing across some submarines into the Arabian Sea, our navy getting tied up into kind of a defensive role there along its coast, so the Pakistanis will get less hurt, things of that nature. So India may end up on a stalemate side. So it's the same risk what the China faces if China attacks us, right? So this is one situation which we have to guard against. And in my view, this may occur should a border level confrontation or LC level confrontation spiral out of control, which is what India has actually always been working upon. Even the surgical strikes which we did, we were at pains to actually say that it is a strike against the terrorists and not strike against Pakistan. Right? Why that articulation was done? It was done. And Bipin Rawat was very much there in the speech. Okay. And the reason is even India doesn't want a war at this stage. So this is a very likely scenario. And in this, everything will come into force. Diplomacy, information warfare, economic warfare, and military growth of India in such a manner that Pakistan should be convinced that if it undertakes a war, even in this kind of a scenario, India would be able to give it back to them right and proper. So hence the need for growing of our military power is an important aspect. Also our economic power. How do we do it is a challenge for the political leadership, challenge for our financial wizards, and for our overall national strength, inherent strength, to actually make us continue to keep us on the path of growth. Now, the last scenario which I have painted, which to me looks to be the more likely one, and which we are likely to see in the next at least 10 years, is that China, India in the gray zone, India, Pakistan in the gray zone. Collusivity by China and Pakistan. India standing alone in this, but taking the help of that pentagram-gramic relationship which you termed it. And in this case, what happens is India will have to rely on its democratic forces to actually give it the strength in terms of technology, in terms of economic assistance, because we will have to slowly then divert our dependence on China, which is China is our largest trading partner even today. Despite all our curbs, etc., the trade has gone back to 100 billion with China. Despite all our bans and curtailment of investments and cancelling of contracts. So therefore, we will have to find alternate resources for our pharmaceuticals, for our rare earth requirements, for our semiconductor requirements, for our chips requirements. So we will have to possibly look into the gray zone conflict area. I am writing a book on gray zone, so you may accuse me of articulating my entire argument in a manner that the most likely scenario which we are likely to see in the short to the medium term is going to be gray zone warfare, new age warfare, cyber warfare, and as part of this, cyber warfare will be at predominance. They have already demonstrated. The Chinese have already demonstrated their capability to hit at our ports, hit at our power distribution centers in the country. All of them, all 5 power distribution centers, they were able to intervene electronically. And if they wanted, they could have put us in the dark. And what it actually occurs is that we lose our economic. Imagine the entire country coming to a dark. So all your trains, everything, loads, goods trains, etc., everything stopped for that much period. We will suffer losses in those terms. I have now also got some very, very concrete reports that the ISI has infiltrated our air traffic systems. And that is something which actually will cause a major damage to our reputation, both in terms of travel, tours, etc. If we start having 1 or 2 crashes, it's no more era of hijacking now. It's going to be era of people interfering into your electronic systems, causing these synchronized operations failure, which may result in either some crashes, which may result in delays, which may result in so many things. I mean, there can be a chaos as far as air traffic control system of our interfered to by the Pakistanis. In terms of through its ISI wing. So these are the areas which we need to, I think, focus on in the future. That's the analysis which I have made of your war game theory. Okay.
Ambassador, sir.
I think I can't add anything more. It's been such a detailed and I fully agree. But only one more thing I can say is that suppose there is a problem between, whether it is between India and Pakistan or between China and India, if there is any conflict scenario, just short of, I mean, we have already discussed that none of them actually won the war, but war happens for many other reasons, flimsy reasons as well. Mm-hmm. So it is, in that case, I feel that it will be a very short war. It will not be a long war. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I feel that the international community, especially all your partners, will immediately try to get the ceasefire. Because it is in no one's interest today. India, the 3rd largest economy. India is one of the largest militaries and, power, a strong power. And also the international system gets destabilized in the process when 2 big powers go to war. So I think that is something that you will see the role of the international community in that, especially Russia, US. Russia would be the first one. Their foreign minister will be shuttling between Beijing and New Delhi in no time, or Islamabad for that matter. Absolutely. US will immediately deploy its assets, move them here, there. That's what you can see. France might come to your rescue. But at the same time, I mean, I think it's a no-win situation for anybody in this. And that is the one reason, and game theory dictates that we should, why they would not go to war. Because there has to be an adequate compensation, and that compensation is missing in this whole thing. It is neither prestige, nor land, nor any other benefit in this.
So basically, I think, we...
Gray zone. That's the right word.
So I guess we have exhausted of our, so we have covered the whole ground, and this was a very fantastic discussion. So today I am actually compelled to make an unusual closing with an open question at the end for both of you gentlemen, hereby going to the Aesop's fable, where the sun tells the wind to stop blowing hard, to take the man's coat off, instead make him feel warm and he'll take the coat off himself, right? So can this be India's diplomatic approach towards China? In the process, the byproduct is that we also get to keep our friend Russia. Gentlemen.
Well, I think so. It's quite possible. Russia is going nowhere. Not for that they love us so much. They're not going anywhere because we are also, they're one of the biggest supporters, become one of the biggest markets, be it in defense or anywhere else. Plus, they still have high hopes with India, especially in collaborating in key areas, especially in the Arctic and elsewhere. And I have a feeling that soon we will have another trilateral coming up. That will be Russia, Japan, and India.
General sir, your closing remarks, please.
My closing remarks, so to say, is that, well, Russia is the wild card, which will continue to be our balancing of the situation. Like the Chinese are using Pakistan. Chinese call Pakistan as their Israel. I think for us, Russia will be that particular country which will possibly bring in that element of balance in the region. That's the one thing. The second thing which I feel is that China is not Japan. And when I say this, I am saying it in the context that, yes, China has become a very dominant power today. It is the second largest power, military power, as well as economic power. So therefore, it has the capacity to browbeat countries. But there is certain thing which is happening similar to Japan, what started happening to it when Japan was growing in similar manner. The difference between China and Japan is that Japan had the technological strength when its population was growing old. So it managed to keep itself afloat. The Chinese population is growing old. My sense is it should not become old before it becomes rich. I think we need to work on that. If the technologies are denied to China, China still remains. It has not produced an aero engine till date. We need to, I think, play on this fear of China that technologically, while they may be, yes, they are well ahead, but some critical technology, they are aggregators of technology. Let me put it this way: they are superpowers, aggregators of technology, which also includes military technology. So China is, and today the Chinese condition is very bad. In terms, it's having food shortages. It has told its country to actually stock up for winters. I'm reminded of the Russian, Japanese, and German offensive when the Russians allowed the Germans to get inside. So today they are having coal shortages. Of course, it is their own doing. They refused the Australian coal, and now there is going to be a power shortage, because of which their industries are going down. Their manufacturing industries are now being relocated to other countries, and the Pakistanis are calling horse. The steel industry of Pakistan is actually up in protest against China for dumping by China. These are the areas which we need to actually play upon all the countries which are supporting debt return, BRI supporting nations. They're all going to fall into this trap. Let's work on the fears of China more aggressively. I think the court will come off on its own.
Fantastic. So I guess there's enough said today for me to summarize. Thanks, General Singh. Thanks, Ambassador Trigunayat, for being on Diplomacy Direct. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Jai Hind.